Welcome to Subscription Prescription, the podcast where you get the information you need to scale your subscription program. Before we dive into this week's dose, I want to bring up something really important to every subscription brand out there, and that is using email effectively. Now, we all know that email can be a powerful tool when you don't have a subscriber, but often we're worried about sending emails and what they will make customers do, like canceling. But the truth is that one of the biggest opportunities that subscription brands have to not only prevent cancellations, but also increase the average order value of their subscribers is to effectively leverage email. I want to introduce a new tool to you called Zaymo. Zaymo embeds one-click action links inside of your email so that customers can make a simple choice with a single click with no redirects and no changes, no redirecting to a portal or anything else like that. The beautiful thing is that Zaymo can allow you to increase average order value while also decreasing churn, which they did in a recent A/B test that they ran with gains in bulk. They were able to embed a one-click action to skip an order, which prevented churn, lowering it by 22%, as well as one-click orders to subscriptions that increased the average order value by 37% inside of a test that they ran. So if you're interested in getting more from your emails and more from your subscribers, I highly suggest that you take a look at Zaymo. I will have a link to the case study that I just mentioned for gains in bulk. And the beautiful thing is they run a 30-day free trial. They'll set up a campaign and test it with you to prove that it works. So go check out Zaymo.com. And now back to the show. Welcome, everyone, to another dose of Subscription Prescription, the podcast where we try to help you figure out everything related to D2C subscriptions. I'm your host, Matthew Holman, and I'm honored today to be joined by Eric Carlson, the founder of Sweatpants Agency. Eric, thanks for coming on, man. One of my favorite things about having a podcast and working in this space is when I get to actually interview my friends, when I get to interview people that I know are just absolutely crushing it in the space, because then it's just doubly exciting for me because I get to learn from you. I know my audience is going to learn from you, but then we get to have a good time. So for those of you that don't know Eric or Sweatpants Agency, they're a little bit of a boutique agency in the sense of that they're managing around 40 to 50 clients. They do both email, SMS, creative, and PPC or paid media buying. We actually have several clients in common together, which is always really fun getting to collaborate on those. And honestly, like Eric and his team have worked in some of the biggest brands in the space. If you guys have ever heard of Hunt a Killer, they're one of the fastest growing brands out there, one of the most popular subscription brands out there. They work with BattleBox, they've worked with Gentleman's Club, worked with quite a few of them. So Eric is one of those guys, if you don't follow him on social media already, I highly recommend it. Is insightful, no fluff, getting right to the heart of the matter. So with all of that, setting the bar super, super high, Eric, welcome to the show, man. Welcome to the show. So one of the things I wanted to start with is because you just understand like acquisition so well, is just with a general question, what are you seeing in the acquisition space as it relates to subscriptions about what's working now, types of offers you're seeing, trends? What's making people buy subscriptions?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to think about with subscription. One of the things that's timely right now is obviously summer seasonality.
Right.
Obviously, in e-com, every brand can be different, right? Like we were selling golf supplies, for example, they're probably going to do well during the winter, but as a general rule, e-com does worse in summer. So for a lot of the acquisition, we often have to spend a lot more time focusing on the offer instead of just the creative, the conversion, other elements. And that's usually one of the bigger levers during this type of time period. And it's usually one of the best places to actually spend your time. One of the things, and I know that you and I actually have talked about this quite a bit. One of the things that I think about a lot with like marketing is I always think of it like a pyramid. And when I think of the pyramid, at the very bottom, you basically have product and offer. And with a great product, you're going to have a bunch of people that wait in line to go ahead and get that product. With a great offer, they'll do exactly the same thing. And above that, you have the conversion. Then you tend to have the creative. And then at the very top for mass market, you're usually talking about audience. Well, just looking at that, for the most part, you really want to go ahead and focus in on that offer. And then if that's not working, you want to go ahead and focus on the conversion and then obviously creative after that. Those are our main focuses. In terms of the types of creative that's working right now and the type of acquisition, I mean, listen, Facebook's still the beast that I really hate, but it is still the most efficient channel for
Right.
most D2C brands. So a lot of the budget gets deployed there. And then in terms of audiences, for the most part, they're very broad. Obviously, you can test some interest clusters and things like that, but it's usually very broad, very consolidated. And then in terms of the creative, it varies. I mean, we have a lot that basically show good concept of use, showing
Mhm.
how this fits into your everyday life. And that's something that I think plays a big part in a lot of subscription, is how you think
Right.
about this playing into your life. And a lot of it's, UGC type content. And then certain brands like BattleBox, we go a little more crazy. We uh, occasionally, when we can get away with it, we sometimes throw in, we'll call it parody of politics. We try to offend both sides equally.
It's
um,
such a
but
fun brand to play with.
but yeah, I mean, that's the type of stuff that's working right now. It's really dial in on the offer, focus there, and then obviously focus on everything else in the pyramid kind of going up.
It's so interesting because like I think of when I go into a consult or talking to a brand, it's like the last thing I want to touch is the audience or who they're trying to reach, because that can change everything downstream of it. But if I can figure out how to fix the offer for the traffic that's coming in, then it's like, big success there. So like you've talked about that, and I really like that. And I'm, already thinking about how I'm going to steal this in the future, of the pyramid example that
Yeah.
offers the foundation. Then we're moving up into conversions, and ultimately we're getting into creative, into audience. So
Mhm.
I'm curious, like for you, what are some interesting offers that you're seeing work? Is it discounts? Is it free product? Is it positioning, prepaid options? What are some of the ways you're seeing offers work?
Sure. So actually, one of the things that you just brought up is actually really cool to bring in here about the offers, and that is the audience is the thing that you think last about. With the offers that we're running these days, a lot of the offers that are working are some type of gift with purchase, and it's usually that or some type of discount on your first, your first box. You don't want to give a discount of 20% off the lifetime of a subscription. You
Right.
want to do it on the first box. But one of the things about the offers that's really interesting is I think a lot of people kind of have this notion in their head in subscription that if they just target better people, they're going to have better retention. And the truth is like if you look at like loyal cohorts across the board, they can vary a lot. So like you'll
Mhm.
have, somebody that's on SSI that is buying the product and is one of your number one customers, and then you'll have another household where you got two partners and large law firms living in a mansion together, and they're your loyal cohort. But where we've actually seen some of the best retention is actually crafting the offer, right? So like some of our brands where we see like the best CAC LTV are often when we give away a free gift, right? We have one that our best CAC LTV is when we offer a 20% discount plus two free products along with it.
Interesting.
So I really like those bonuses because a lot of times if you do dig into the data, which this is way more controllable than audience, when you dig into the data of the actual offer, you often can see different retention numbers with each one of those. And then you can start then looking at, well, what's my CAC to LTV or my CAC to lifetime contribution margin, right? And then you can make some really good decisions. So the stuff that's really working for us for the most part is some free gift. And I will say with certain brands too, we even do it as like almost a bonus throughout the year, right? So like we have this
Right.
charcuterie box one, and we offer free brie for a year, and obviously that does quite well too.
That's what I've always loved with like that butcher box option. It's like, get chicken
Yeah.
wings for life or get this for life when you subscribe. It's particularly incentive. I'm curious, just your own opinion. Why do you think the gift option works better in some ways? I mean, I'll share my opinion after, but I'm just curious, why do you think that is more compelling than necessarily a typical discount play or just a discount play?
So I think there's a lot of reasons behind it. If you go into like a restaurant and they offer you like 50% off your entree, right? You're probably not going to see the same value in that dinner
Hmm.
when you come back, right? You're going to be like, well, I don't know if I want to pay this price. However, if you go to a restaurant and the owner walks up to you and says, hey, did you, are you guys considering dessert? And we say yes or no. And they'll be like, well, you really got to try this. I'll tell you what, we'll do it on the house. And they give away something for free. The expectation is not that you're going to get that for free again. Right. And so I think that's one thing that a lot of people miss is that when you're giving away too high of discounts, especially after about 30%, you start to see increase in churn because people aren't looking at it from the same
Right.
level of value. But the other thing that I think works really well about the free gifts is that you can add on a gift that makes the experience better, right? So, like for
Exactly.
instance, we have at BattleBox, we sometimes give away a free tent, right? And you're getting all this outdoor stuff. Well, let's get you out in the outdoors, right? What's the easiest way to do that? We're doing it with a tent. If we look at something like Kiddie Poo Club, right? We're giving away uh, a dome and a scoop to go along with the actual litter box. Well, guess what? That makes the experience better. So I think if I had to narrow it down to two major factors, I think one is that it doesn't hurt the value perception. And number two, it can actually make the
Enhance the
experience better
yeah.
overall.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I had a conversation last week with a premium beauty brand here in Utah that's doing pretty well, and we had this exact same discussion. And they're doing heavy discounts, and then what happens is, one, when somebody goes to cancel or they run a special or something, they can't just keep discounting it more. So people are just flipping from whatever discount offers the best. But then there's also this perceived value of like, hey, here's a really popular product we have. We're discounting at 30-40% off to get you to subscribe. It's a totally different expectation than, hey, here's subscribe to this product. You get a complimentary product, like a sister product to it for free, right? As long as you're on that subscription. It's a totally different perceived value. Yeah, I think everything you said, and then it's just a question of like, I also like just to add in that point of like self-selection. So if I'm really serious about this and you're offering me that second product, if I elect for that as an option, it's because I think that I'm going to use it and that it's going to be more impactful for me. And then it does, like you said, enhance that experience, make it stickier, right? Like whether you're just selling supplements and you're combining those and things. So I really like that. Yeah.
I'll tell you too, and you might be, I don't know if you know him, but a guy named Patrick Campbell, he ran a company called Profit Well, eventually sold it.
Yep.
And Patrick is probably one of the smartest guys when it comes to retention.
Actually have a pin of theirs right on my desk.
That's
he was
awesome.
out here in Utah for a while, but anyway,
well, that's true. I forgot about that. Yeah. But he used to do these analysis on like 2,000 plus businesses, and he had SaaS in there with some of the consumers. So I sometimes discounted, but one thing that I always remember, he had the data on two things that I consistently see. One is that you go above a 30% discount, you see the churn increase by a lot. But number two, he actually showed that if you had add-ons, whether it's SaaS or it's consumer, that those customers tend to have a longer lifetime value. And it's crazy because he's doing it mostly with SaaS businesses at that time when he did that analysis, but yet it still applies to everything that we see today.
Right. No, that's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. And I love it. You brought up offer. I didn't even need to tip that off to you, but that is the thing that the drum I'm beating all the time. It's being the most impactful place people can spend their time.
It's such a big lever. Like, you and I are around the same age, but like I always give this example because it really hits at home, right? Like back in the day, I used to eat cardboard tasting pizza called Domino's because I could, if the driver was late, it was 30 minutes or it was free. If the driver was late, I was getting the pizza for free. Yep. And I ordered it kind of almost as a game, but also because I wanted free pizza, right? And so if you make a really good offer, people will crawl over broken glass to get to it. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be that good of a product, right?
Dude, the weirdest that you mentioned that like Little Caesars was doing a special on pineapple Pepsi, which is the weirdest thing, but it was only available through Little Caesars. Like it was a Little Caesars exclusive. And I ordered it just to try it because I was like, all right, this is an exclusive thing. I could have just like, because a lot of times I might ignore that and say, okay, if I really want it, I'll pick it up at 7-Eleven or whatever. It's like, no, this is the only place to get it. I added it onto my pizza and it was all right. Like I'm not going to subscribe to it or anything like that. But it really is all about that offer of how you make that, whether it's exclusivity, convenience,
add-ons, discounts, all those things. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see you had another thought you want to share.
Well, no, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because like that is something too, and like this doesn't play for every subscription, right? But like, we talk a lot in email about creating FOMO moments, right? Like, how do we create more scarcity? How do we create more urgency? And when you have, let's say, a subscription box, for example, or even if you were, let's say, doing a beverage, if you have a limited time release, right, or something special, you can also get a lot of movement there too, right? So like, for instance, Boxu, all the time they have a Sakura box, and it comes out once a year, right? Almost like the McRib. However, this is way better than the McRib. And
such a throwback to our youth. Domino's pizza.
we didn't eat very healthy.
Yeah, no, that and cereal, but anyway.
Right. But with that limited time release, the fact that it comes out once a year, it creates such a great FOMO moment that in and of itself is almost like an offer. So, we see that. We used to do it with beverages, limited time flavor, different things like that. So, anything that you can do to entice a person, but without killing the value of the product, usually is going to lead to more acquisition. And if you craft it right, it can also lead to more LTV than even a straight up acquisition without.
Absolutely. I feel like we could talk all day on that, but there's like more stuff I want to get into with you. But you mentioned email. I'm gonna just throw this out there, and I'd like you to react to it. The idea that I should not be emailing my subscribers because I'll remind them they have a subscription and they'll cancel.
So that I'll be honest, I have a feeling that you and I might differ on this a little bit, but I maybe not. I think it depends, right? I think in certain brands, when you have like a ridiculously high churn, you're probably better not reminding the customer all the time, right? So if you got, let's say, 4 rebills and it's over 4 months, maybe you're not going to go ahead and email those people as much. Then, if you start getting above 6 months or something like that, you might only want to send them kind of certain special offers, right? Because like, you don't necessarily want to send to somebody that's already buying your product messages all the time, unless it's really good and exclusive. So like, one of the things that we did at Honey Killer is we essentially created a product ladder, right? So you had the subscription, but we also had premium boxes and these like experiences where, might take 3 days to solve, but it's like $199 experience. And that's the type of thing that we would send to those subscribers, is these big offers, these new releases, these higher ticket items, right? If you start to have over, let's say, like a 12-month retention, or with some brands, we have very few, but when we have them, they're great. We have some brands that go over like 20 months of retention. We don't really care as much about whether we send emails or not. Now, overall, what I would say is there are strategies for email that you should be doing no matter what, right? And I think you and I talk about this a lot, but like in-cycle upselling, I think we were one of the first to ever do it. We did it with Honey Killer. I think that was the first out in the wild, and then we ended up doing quite a few others. But like, basically, if you hit somebody up a little bit after they get their first experience, it's a great time to try to get them on a prepaid plan, right? So get them to pay for 3 months up front, 6 months up front, a year up front. Why? Because it's probably the ultimate tool to increase retention, right? If I got a subscription that's 6 months, well, if I sell a 6-month prepaid plan to somebody, I'm already at that, right? Plus I get the cash up front. Then I'm selling the annual to them. I'm doing even better. And I think you actually shared a tool the other day. I don't know if we can talk about it yet, but like, it's a company out in Utah, and it looks like they're about to make this a whole lot easier. Can I mention them?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Zaymo. And I mean, we haven't implemented it yet, but like, our whole email team knows that I want to implement this. And so, these tools that have the ability to upgrade people is amazing. And like, a lot of people forget about that. Like, when you first get your first experience, that's when you're most euphoric about it, right? So that's one example of like something that you should be sending no matter what. Other things that you should be sending no matter what. Before somebody gets the experience, right? Like, one, they just made a purchase. Make them feel good about the
Yep.
purchase they just made, right? Like you want them to feel like this is the most amazing decision that they ever made. Sorry to all the wives and the husbands, but this is the best decision that you've ever made. And we really want to hit that home, but like also, and I've seen this in a lot of your writing. You talk about a lot of the reasons that people churn, right? So like too much product, not able to get it on a certain delivery date, all these other types of things, right? Well, once you get that survey data, you learn a lot about that customer. And I would say just in general rule, you're usually talking about price is number one. You can only do so much about that. Too much product's always like number two. And then I think flexibility of subscriptions usually number three or so. You should be educating the user on how to manage their subscription. If they want to skip, if they want to change a date, if they want to go ahead and do an add-on, if they want to do anything, you want to make sure that you educate them. So that's something else. And then if it's a consumable, you want to go ahead and probably you want to give them a lot of tips on how to use the product. I know some people that do recipes, if it's beverage or food related.
Right.
If we're doing cleaning stuff, it might be good to go ahead and do some future pacing, talking about, how your house is going to smell after 30 days, how, everybody's allergies are going to be better and the house smells better after 60 days and then 90 days. But also give away some cleaning tips. And so I guess the more I talk, the more I realize that we email everybody. but like as a general rule, when you're sending out a lot of campaigns, there are some strategic decisions that we tend to make there.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like I would say if all of the things are being equal, if you're afraid to email subscribers, that is a problem. Or I think that's a problem that you should try to understand better. So
true.
But that being said, like the irony is I've recently worked with some brands where they don't send the order notification email, but they send like shipping confirmation and all these other emails. And so it sometimes makes me wonder, like, I'm not sure their team gets that they're actually sending 3 emails every time an order goes. They're just not sending the upcoming order processing notification. So it's like, okay, well, if you're sending all of these, are we using some kind of shipping, like customization, like Rush or Wonderment to like enhance that experience? Like, and then same thing, like order notification emails. If you're just sending the default out of whatever subscription app that says like, hey, click here to cancel, click here to change your order. Well, that's just telling somebody to cancel. So it's really all about just being a little bit more thoughtful on how you're doing it. I would hope that ideally long term that you have some kind of way of, like you mentioned, the hunt a killer, like the product upsell process of getting into the premium boxes. To me, that's perfect. It's like whatever you're selling, there should be some kind of premium experience available, whether that's an app download that has more features in it, whether that's like extra product or a membership club or whatever it is, and starting to look at what signals people should be giving where you want to start sending that. So do you send that after box 2? Do you send that after box 1? Do you send that after box 3? Right? Like, or shipments or whatever it is. Like, so I think that's just the way to think about it. But, and you mentioned the way about like getting people to use the product and educate, FAQs, all that stuff. So not that far off on email theory at all.
I think too, you hit the nail on the head, which is like essentially, if you got a churn that you're churning and burning people after 3-4 months, you have a product problem, most likely, right? And so you have to look at that. I understand. Listen, I bootstrapped almost every business that I've ever done. Actually, I personally bootstrapped every business that I've done. We've been involved with a lot of bootstrap businesses. And, sometimes you do need to think about like, okay, what happens if I lose some people or whatever? And there's that fear that bakes in. But ultimately, if the customers are leaving after 2, 3, 4 months, that means that you have a product problem. It's like us as an agency, for example, like we don't even take on like every client that we talk to. A lot of them we don't. In fact, it's kind of rare. Like usually what we end up doing is like we have a conversation. We try to figure out if we can add value. And if we don't see that it's going to be long term, we're not going to do it. But like on the reverse end, like when somebody churns from our business, we look at what do we improve, right? Like everybody sometimes wants to blame somebody else. And that's great. You know what? Maybe it is somebody else's fault, but I can't control that. I can only control what I do, right? And even if it's a case where like we're doing everything right, and maybe there's just some miscommunication. Well, let's look at what we're doing wrong from a communication standpoint. And I feel like a lot of people aren't necessarily willing to be that self-critical, especially if you're early as an entrepreneur, being that self-critical of yourself.
Right.
And I think back to your point, like if you have a 3 or 4 month retention, you probably have other problems than
Right.
to think about. And, the symptom of that is you don't want to email people, but that's probably because you have these other problems.
Yeah. And ultimately it's like, I think about offer and product, right? Like if I'm heavily discounting, that's why I'm losing people in month 1 and month 2. If I'm losing people in month 3 and 4, it's probably related to product or experience. You got to figure out how to get that better. I'm curious, with your experience, what are either some big opportunities or big mistakes you see from a communication standpoint as it relates to email and SMS?
So, I think the biggest opportunity is honestly the in-cycle upselling. I think that has done more for retention for anything that's under 12 months than almost anything else that I've ever seen. I think that kind of welcome series is probably going to be one of the most important series that you have in terms of communication with somebody. I think another thing that probably isn't entirely thought about here, but you already have an inbox delivery system with a subscription, and that's the box itself that comes in, right? So like there's things that you can go ahead and put into that box to go ahead and sell more. I think other opportunities are, occasionally referral programs. I think sometimes too, like there's certain cliffs in businesses on subscription. And if you start to see some of those cliffs, there's things that you can test, right? So you take a cohort of people and you send to them. You see how many of those retain versus the control sample. And you might send them an in-cycle upsell actually after 3 months, because maybe that's a cliff. Or alternatively, you let them know that there's a surprise coming in their box, in box pool, right? Because that's going to basically help keep them on board. Other cases too is like, I know a subscription that's in the cleaning space and they have a cloth that comes along with their product. Well, when we looked at the survey data, a lot of people after a certain while, their cloth wasn't as good, right? And they wanted a new one, but they didn't know where to get it. Well, let's go ahead and fix that problem, right? But I think if we really want to get to the root of it, and I know you preach about this, and I'm so glad you do because not enough people do online, is you just need to go ahead, talk to the customers, survey the customers, find out where these weak spots are, and then you can find all these communication gaps that you can try to fill in. And I had an old business partner, and he had a great phrase for this. He said that marketing is the one test that you can walk up to the teacher and ask all the questions. And it's so true. Your teacher is the customer. Yeah.
What do you have you seen, like, using ways of like either SMS or maybe like a post-pilot send or even an email after the fact of like, hey, the shipment's there and you're checking in with how it went? Or is that like a churn increaser because it's not, they've got it, now you're reminding them that it's going to renew again?
We send out some type of renewal. Generally. In the past, I will tell you that we typically didn't. And I think that there's certain walls too. If I'm not mistaken, I think anything that's a 6 month needs to go ahead and give a notification up front. I think after 12 months, you need to get a notification up front. I also think that when you start to look at some of those notifications, to your point, some of them can be consolidated and some of them can also be great reminders or marketing pieces, right? Like we took one client where they had to send out these shipping notifications every month, but they really didn't want to, right? Because of where they're located and some of the laws related to it, not in the US. And what we ended up doing is actually making the top of it more like something that gets them more excited about using the product again. Right. And at the bottom, it had some of that additional information. So I hate to say it's almost like we hit it a little bit, but we did. It's like, let's give them a hierarchy of like, let's reaffirm why this was such a great decision, how to use it, get them excited, get their energy flowing, and then we can go ahead and let them know that it's coming to them. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. It's probably not something, I'll be honest, it's something that we've done. I don't know if it's something that we focus on as much as now I want to.
No, yeah, it's just an idea, because it's like, I think of it like, Hunter Killer is a great example. Crunch Labs is another great example. It's there's a finished product with the shipment, right? Like you solve the case, find the killer, you put the thing together with Crunch Labs. Like, so there's like this, I love this moment with the product that happens other than just unboxing. And so I'm always thinking like, okay, well, how do I do that with like protein powder? Right? Like how do I get somebody to feel like special or like successful? Is that like tracking their workouts? Is like, again, I think it is just about like, you mentioned like the market asking the teacher all the answers to the questions. It's like, what can I do that's working or not, more of that's fixing something that's not working, or do more of something that is working for my customers or subscribers to enhance that experience?
Well, I think if you're a commodity, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
You want to have a product that has some differentiators in the market, right? So like protein powder, there are some that have differentiators. I think there's some that dissolve perfectly. They're easy,
Right.
maybe cause less bloating, things like that. But even with that example, I often think about Supergut. And Supergut's not a brand that we've ever done agency work for, but I respect the hell out of in terms of what I got from them. I don't know if it was ROI efficient because of some of the ways it was done, but Supergut is basically a prebiotic, right? Versus a probiotic. And the whole theory behind it is that, probiotics, they basically don't make it all the way down to where they need to. They break down.
Right.
And you're also introducing bacteria that might change the ecosystem of your stomach. Whereas like prebiotic, you're essentially feeding the whole ecosystem. And it's like a rainforest, you don't want too much of one thing or it's going to go ahead and hurt something else. You're getting it more natural. So they sell this powder. You can put it into a drink. But what I really loved about them is they sent me a kit up front. And in the kit, it actually broke down how I was going to feel after week 1, week 4,
Yes.
2 months or 3 months down the line, and 3 months down the line. And it was automatically put me in the frame of reference of like, hey, I'm committed to this, right? And I think back to a lot of my friends who used to run gyms and things like that. And I always remember like them kind of doing the hard sell, like, fitness isn't one of those things that you basically just step in the gym a couple times and expect it to work. It's something that you need to commit to for at least 6 months, a year, or even a lifetime. Can you commit to me right now that you can do 6 months, right? And automatically they got people thinking about that longer term retention, and everybody says yes, right? But like they did that in this actual insert, and I believe they did it on email. Then they had an adherence series that this is where I think the ROI could be tough, where I could basically subscribe to text notifications where every day it would basically ask me, did you take your Supergut? And you say yes or no.
Okay, I've been throwing that idea out there. Is anybody's doing that? And yeah, because there's the cost of the text you send. But I would posit, my theory is that people that opt into that would retain better, even if they aren't as consistent taking it because of the reminder. But then again, maybe it's like, again, at some point you're like, I'm not taking this, I don't need it. But I mean, even with those situations, I always think if somebody isn't using the product or not seeing value, it's only a matter of time before they cancel. So it's like you might get an extra order or two, which again, I know can be massive for offsetting like the cost to acquire customers and profitability.
Yep.
Not want to downplay that at all. But the difference between somebody that you maybe get 1 or 2 orders out of, as opposed to an experience where you get somebody for 6 months or 12 months or 2 years beyond what you would get. So I'm going to have to go check it. I might actually even just go subscribe to their product because if they're still doing that. Because
I'll tell you what, I think, so have you ever used the 8 Sleep before?
Oh, so a sleep aid or a specific product? Because
the product Sleep 8, it's it's a bed that cools. It actually has a subscription attached to it, and it basically cools to keep you asleep, right? And it has an algorithm, and you pay, I think, an annual fee or a monthly fee. I have one, and they use all this data across everybody. But what was really cool about them is they had me download the app because it does some of the tracking. But with the app, I get notifications every day about like, hey, your HRV was a little too low. Make sure that you go ahead and you spend some time recovering, et cetera. When I started thinking about cost and the SMS, even just from a process standpoint, it probably would have been better for Supergut to do an app and basically do push notifications with us and have the adherence schedule there. So to be honest, there probably is a cheap way to do it. And maybe the sweatpants test or the smoke test to see if it actually has legs is the SMS up front. But then you can go ahead and make the economics work later with an app.
Yeah, that, I mean, to me, like if I'm like, because I get asked this every once in a while, like name your or build your ideal subscription experience, like, you know, hypothetically and stuff. And it always comes down to some kind of like regular, consistent engagement, whether that's like a coaching thing, a check-in thing, whether it's a tracking or a monitor with an app, like, because I just think that, again, yes, there's plenty of people that will buy the product and never download the app or never opt into the messaging or whatever it is. But the people that do are the people that are one step closer to adopting the product in every day of their life. And that's one step closer to being a lifetime customer. So just thinking ways you can create more engagement, more, again, I use the term engagement all the time. It's like, what can I do to get a little bit of like, this feels a little more two-way than one way, both for better and for worse.
I mean, the way that I used to talk about that all the time is like, you know, people just need to figure out ways to turn their subscription more into an experience, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's it, right? Like if I get the protein, what makes it a better experience, right? Like if I don't have great differentiators, or even if I do, what makes it more into an experience? Even that future pacing, the thing that gets people excited, gives them purpose behind it. You know, that's giving them more experience. You know, we've worked with, you know, a couple different like women's boxes where like, you know, there might be some books and some self-care items and all these other types of things. And what was interesting is like one of the best retention items was basically having like these like little mantra sayings that they would get every month, right? Like these things that made them feel good and, you know, be like insightful. I guess the equivalency for me would be like, you know, reading like quotes from Marcus Aurelius on Stoicism, right? Like,
daily Stoic.
But it, you know, you would see that actually bump up the retention, and I think that's the main thing. And I think people just need to think about how they change this from just stuff in a box or something showing up to how do I turn this into an experience, right? And there's a lot of ways to do it. I mean, I think that that's probably a whole nother discussion. But
no, it is.
So many ways.
I posted this the other day. This will be month or, you know, however long or later before this is published, but my kid gets Crunch Labs, and it was a water pistol this month. And there was a nozzle you could turn to have it shoot back at the person shooting it, so that if you gave it to your friend, it would be a prank. And I'm just like, that it, from a retention standpoint, I just was like blown away. Because yes, that's fun. The kids love it. An engineer thought that was cool. But from a retention side, like, are you serious? Like, I now have a kid who's just showing this to 2 other friends instantly. Product introduction, you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of stuff. And that's, again, that should be the mindset. It's like, what can I do to make this just like a little bit more usable, a little bit more shareable, a little bit more special, or really just what's going to make this more special, because that's what makes it shareable and stuff like that. But that's the stuff, that's the secret sauce to really strong subscription growth, right?
I mean, man, listen, it isn't just subscription. That's like the secret sauce of so many businesses. Like, it's a social cred thing, right? Like we do D2C skis, for example, and I don't want to say what the number is because like they're very rare in this, but it's massive in terms of number of referrals, right? So like you see the friend referrals on the post-purchase survey. Well, of course it is, because the skis look really effing cool. They're unique. You don't really see them out in the wild, but like when somebody does, they want to share it and somebody wants to ask them about it. And it's those little social cred moments. You know, I even think of like some of the social form moments too, where like we've done these different gifting things where like, you know, might send a gift to somebody and up front it might be digital and it sends them a gift card or whatever. Well, you have a much higher likelihood of having both the recipient and the person sending it reorder if simply you ask the recipient to write a note back saying thank you. Just that simple social element. So you sometimes have to think about like, what are these social structures that we have as humans? And some of it's, you know, hey, I got a social currency and I want to show this, and I'm an adopter. Or it's just common courtesy. And how do you build that in? Because a lot of times that leads to more friends and referrals, and it can also lead to better retention, more repeat orders, etc.
I love that. All right, dude, this has been super fun.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on the show. Any final thoughts or takeaways? I mean, we've talked about offers, we've talked about messaging, we've talked about creating special moments. Like, I mean, obviously, more we could dive into, but it's been really, really great.
Yeah, I mean, no other takeaways other than I gotta say I really like jamming about marketing with you, and I'd love to do it again.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Cool. Well, so for anybody who doesn't, again, already follow, you should give Eric a follow on LinkedIn or Twitter. I think his content's amazing. And then for anybody else who's, want to go check out sweatpantsagency.com, I'll have a link in the bio, link in the show notes, so you can go check out his site. Check out what Eric and his team have been up to. Again, I have several clients that are working with them. It's really fun to collab on that stuff with them. And as you have heard, he and his team really know their stuff. So Eric, thanks again for coming on the show, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah. That's it for this week's dose. Stay tuned for next week for another dose of subscription prescription.
And one more thing before I sign off, I'd want to urge you again to go check out Zaymo.com. Look at that case study that they ran for Gains in Bulk about improving average order value, decreasing churn. There is no reason why you shouldn't be leveraging emails to prevent cancellations and improving the lifetime value of your subscriber. So go to Zaymo.com today. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe so that you can get notified when new episodes come out each week on Tuesdays.